Welcome to Inside Politics with Kevin Klein, beyond the headlines, beyond the spin. Straight facts, sharp analysis, and common sense conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of Inside Politics. I'm Kevin Klein. I am joined by two of my Winnipeg Sun columnists today and colleagues. We have Royce Koop, who is a professor of political sciences at the University of Manitoba, and Lawrence Pinsky, who is an attorney and with King's Counsel. We have a lot to talk about on this show, but I think first and foremost, I want to bring up a story that we broke on the Winnipeg Sun Friday morning about a comment that was made by a minister. And this is the Minister of Families, Nahanni Fontaine. And I mean, if you look on the internet right now, everyone is talking about what happened and the devastation that happened with the assassination. And it's the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This is a very, interesting time. It was just a few days ago. Lawrence, you were with me. We were at an event with former Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper. And when he was asked about this, he said he was, very clear. You can have vigorous arguments without ostracization, cancellation, and ultimately assassination. That's what Prime Minister Stephen Harper said. Absolutely correct. We need to raise our voices and say stop, because this is getting really scary. Unfortunately, online, it is getting very scary. Very scary. And we're going to talk about some posts from a professor at the University of Toronto. Royce is going to start us off with, or we'll talk later about a post from a professor they found in Victoria, Canada. But right now, I want to talk about a member of the government, a minister in a government in Canada, taking to Instagram and sharing a post that to me was disgraceful. It is inhumane, and she should be removed from office immediately. Royce, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So this people should go to the Winnipeg Sun and they can read the Instagram post. It was written by Nahanni Fontaine, who's our families minister in Manitoba, and then deleted after the Premier Kinew gave a statement about the death of Charlie Kirk. I think it should be said, the Premier, I don't think the Premier of Manitoba needs to make a statement about, an event in the United States, but he did. It was a thoroughly decent statement. Kinew is at his best when he's speaking as a human being, as a father, rather than a politician. I thought it was good. And it contrasts with this post from the families minister. Even not talking about it from a political perspective, to start, she wrote that I have absolutely no empathy for this person, for Charlie Kirk. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a 31-year-old father, husband who was shot in the neck and kind of bled to death. You don't have empathy for someone like that? It's a concerning thing to read. It's the kind of thing you expect from people to say that are too young to know any better, that are far too online, or people that are kind of frightening ideologues. That this is a minister. It's someone who's taken on a leadership role here in Manitoba, and we should hold her to a high standard. I thought it was really remarkable, as you in a bad way, Kevin.
But she's gotten away with it in the past. And I'm going to be very clear. When I was in politics, when I was running for the provincial legislature, she attacked me consistently. Every opportunity she had, she would put out hateful tweets. She would put out lies. She would do whatever she had to do because she felt she could. And the way she had chastised people in the legislature, despite her actions, I was elected. And I saw how she acted in the legislature, which was also disgraceful. We've allowed this to happen. Kinew has allowed this to happen. And now, I listened to a caller on a local radio show here in Winnipeg trying to defend her and saying, well, what was wrong with her comments? What was wrong with what she said? And the CBC, for example, Their coverage on this, and I'm saying this for Lawrence because I know it'll get him going, their coverage from the CBC included a full column emphasizing Kirk's polarizing views, stating he had a long history of contentious statements. Nowhere in their article, this is the CBC, again, our money going to this organization, nowhere in that article did they pause to acknowledge the loss of human life. Lawrence, over to you.
Kevin, you don't have to rile me up. The facts themselves are so atrocious of what we see going on. And Royce, I just want to tell you, there's some talk online that Ms. Fontaine actually not only put that online, but she actually plagiarized it from a person in New Mexico without giving him credit. I don't know that credit is the right word. This is really Ms. Fontaine exhibiting an arrogance, a cruelty, a self-centered nature that is completely inconsistent with someone who's supposed to be representing equities and families. It's a nature and an extent of cruelty that really should not be permitted. I'm sorry, there's a train about to go by.
That's okay. We'll let that train go by. I want to just mention something that it appears the Winnipeg Sun is still looking into this further. It appears that on Instagram, she reshared the post of that person who put that up. So they are saying that it looks like she reshared that. But nonetheless, if you reshare something, you're saying it. You're defending it. You're advocating for what this person said, and you're absolutely right. It is disgusting, Lawrence.
It's actually violence. It actually not only promotes violence, it in itself is a form of violence. And for the CBC to write that as well, there's a dogma behind it, and we see it, frankly, infiltrating at universities. We see it at secondary institutions. I'll talk about that a little bit afterwards. But it really is time, after what she did with an ASL interpreter, after what she did actually making all sorts of false allegations about what was going on in Gaza, and now this. How many strikes will the premier allow this person to take at Manitoba, at Manitobans, and frankly at him? It is really, really atrocious. And I agree with Royce that the premier issued a highly intelligent statement. I was pleased to hear that and see that. But for him then to, at the same time, out of one side of his mouth, say something intelligent, and by his actions keep her in cabinet and in caucus, we judge people by their actions, not by their words. And it's time for you to stand up.
And I want to be clear, the premier was questioned about this. Early this morning, he was on a radio station in Winnipeg called CJOB. And CJOB was talking to him. It's a regular thing they do with the premier. I think it's once a month. But they did pause and say, look, we have to ask you about this. And it's an article that Kevin Kline did. I guess they wanted to put it in there and, give him an opportunity to come after me. But that I did about what Nahanni Fontaine. They read the premier what the Instagram post said. And he did respond by saying, that's terrible. And then they talked about it a little bit, and he said, well, I know what kind of questions are coming, and they said, well, what are you going to do? And he goes, I'm going to talk to her later today. Fair enough. You're not going to sit there and criticize her. That is your party publicly. You want to do that behind closed doors. But he does have to act, and I think he has to act swiftly. He has to come out now and do this. Look at it. We're in a terrible situation with our neighbors to the north as it is right now, right? We're in a tariff war. We got all kinds of other stuff going on. They don't like us right now. We don't like them, apparently. I do. But it seems the government doesn't. And now we have a minister. A minister. This is one of the most honorable positions you can get. I was a minister. It is such an honor to say something so disgusting. It just boggles my mind. But it got worse. And I'm going to go to Royce for this one. It got worse because I talked earlier. A professor out of the University of Toronto, who I believe teaches religious studies, put out a tweet saying, shooting is honestly too good for many of you fascists. And I won't say what the word was after, but it starts with C. Can this person be fired, Royce?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. To maybe to wrap up the conversation about Fontaine, I think that the fact that the premier, when he was asked about it, he said that's terrible. Obviously that's a human response. It's a good response, but it's quite something. When you think about how disciplined and cohesive these parties are, you just kind of criticize a minister. It was quite something. Uh, and every government has, they have good ministers, they have bad ministers. Fontaine is developing quite a track record. She has not been a good minister. She's spent a lot of time distracting from the government's agenda, bad news stories. I really wonder, like, how far is Kinew willing to tolerate this? And so we'll see. As for this professor, my understanding is she posted that before Charlie Kirk was murdered, and you can see how there's real concern now when people can post things like that, the kind of atmosphere that it creates. One of the heartbreaking things that I saw after Charlie Kirk was killed is people just saying that they're afraid to speak. They're afraid to speak out. They don't want to speak in public. They don't want to say, in a lot of cases, conservative things. I watched a video this morning of someone who is out in public a lot. He's looking for body armor. He's decided he's going to buy body armor because he's out. He's a pro-life person who spends a lot of time in public. He's afraid of being shot. He himself is a father. We have to think about the impact of these words, and much more than has been the case in the past.
I don't disagree with you, but I want to hear a little bit more before we go to Lawrence about the professor in Victoria. Can you fill us in on what you've heard there?
And so, yeah, this is, it hasn't been reported on yet. Like, it's just something that's coming out on social media, but apparently a University of Victoria professor who responded to the murder of Charlie Kirk by writing, "Good riddance, the radical left finally sent someone with good aim." It's really shocking stuff. And, it does, as you were saying, Kevin, being a minister is it's a leadership role. It's an important role. I like to think that being a faculty member at a university is a position that I should treat with some respect, and we should conduct ourselves accordingly on social media and elsewhere. And we have some examples of this. There's other faculty members from the United States who are saying things like this. It's really an awful thing, and I really hope people look in the mirror, give their heads a shake more than has been the case.
Now, Lawrence, you did some a little bit of digging and found something out about this U of T professor as well that would add to this and even make it more ironic.
Absolutely, Kevin. It's shocking to me. Some reports on social media say that this professor is on the ethics committee at the university, and the irony, the offensive irony of this person actually being on an ethics committee and espousing this kind of nonsense, this violent rhetoric, is just atrocious. And I'm frankly worried about what this portends for the future with universities and, frankly, secondary institutions promulgating this violence and Marxist ideology of resistance. It's a huge problem. It's sort of a mirror image of in the late 60s, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and we had the FLQ crisis in Canada, and this violence that leaches into our society here and all of the United States. I'm quite concerned that we're going to see the mirror version of that now, and it's got to stop. As for these professors, I wonder what the Trump administration is going to do with them, because they could easily be banned from the U.S., they could be put on watch lists, all sorts of things could happen. And I hope they give their heads a shake, and I hope that administrators of universities say, is this what we want to be the symbol outwardly of our institutions?
Well, they're already taking a beating for social engineering and another, a lot of other things happening on campuses that we've talked about in the past, and I'm sure we'll talk about again. But really, I mean, we have to look at this for what it is. This is the assassination of a young man, Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated in front of his wife and children while answering a question on gun control. The bullets apparently, according to the FBI, had, etchings in them saying, this is for you fascists or something along those lines. I haven't read that exactly, but I know that there are some comments on the bullets and such. But the assassination is just not a tragedy for his family or his supporters. But I believe it's a warning sign. And it's a warning sign for all of us that if this is where our civilization has come to, where if you don't agree with me, I'm taking you out, then we're in a very scary position. And I look again back to the media. We talked about the CBC, and you look at some things online, and Rolling Stone magazine, which should simply stick to writing about music, Rolling Stone magazine chimed in with a headline that actually, to me, sounded somewhat sympathetic, but not to Kirk, of course. People are losing their jobs. This is the headline. People are losing their jobs for criticizing slaying free speech advocate Charlie Kirk. So the article proclaimed that the issue here was people losing their jobs for criticizing him. Apparently, the real story, in the view, my opinion of Rolling Stone, wasn't that the man had been assassinated, but that some journalists, publicists, and faculty who celebrated his death are now facing consequences.
Aside from the obvious evil of assassinating a young father, this guy, and I'm not a big follower of Charlie Kirk, but this guy would go to universities and talked about free speech, exchange ideas with me. And whether I agree or disagree with all or any of his ideas, irrelevant. This is a man who went peacefully to universities and shared his thoughts, right or wrong, doesn't matter. And to assassinate that, to shoot free speech in the neck, in the jugular vein, is an attack on all of Western civilization, and it's atrocious. And people should be held accountable. People like Nahanni Fontaine, people like these university professors, they should be held accountable, because I agree with Royce. Being a university professor should be a position not only of authority, but of dignity. And they breach that responsibility, and it should carry consequences.
Well, I'm hearing reports now that a reporter or a journalist with MSNBC has now been fired for comments that were made on social media. I want to go back, Royce, to you for a second, because you are the political science professor, and I have a lot of respect for Stephen Harper. I know a lot of people have different opinions, and that's fine. But Stephen Harper has always stood up for what he believed in, and it has always been, the voice of reason in many situations. And I go back to what he said Wednesday night in Winnipeg. That was the day of the assassination of Charlie. And he said, we need to raise our voices and say, stop. This is the part that got me. And it gave me chills, because this is getting really scary.
It is getting really scary. And I actually think Lawrence is exactly right. Part of the reason that this assassination has resonated, even outside of the United States, a big reason for that is because Charlie Kirk was kind of modeling civic democratic behavior. He goes to university campuses and argues with people. I mean, isn't that a good thing? We used to like that, disagreeing with each other. There's some sharp disagreements, sharp arguments, but that's okay. That's what we're supposed to do. And he was murdered while he was doing that, while he was doing what we're supposed to do in a democracy. I think Lawrence nailed that. I think that's why people are one of the reasons why people are just repelled by this. I do have to say, in terms of politicians, pretty much every Democratic politician in the United States has pretty forcefully condemned this. There's no politician, no respectable politician that is making excuses for this. What we're seeing is people online, people that really should know better, saying things they shouldn't be saying. That's why I think the Nahanni Fontaine thing is it's as difficult as it is. Like, this is someone in an important position. She should not be acting like someone who's just perpetually online, acting like some of these people that we see making comments. It is. I agree. It's disgraceful.
Okay, but it's pretty common for this woman to do that kind of stuff. Like, she's well known in Manitoba for her comments and her feelings towards a certain race, and and for making statements that could be untrue or twisting the truth a little bit. She's famous for it. She's the one that was got caught on camera and on a hot mic, criticizing the fact that she had to have an American Sign Language person beside her because it was distracting her. And she's the minister responsible for this, this portfolio, and the premier let her off. The premier let her off with that one. She's made other comments online. She was a big supporter of defund the police. I mean, how much more does somebody get away with before a leader appears in the NDP? And I agree with you both. Rob was eloquent and professional and bang on the statement that he made and he put out on social media. And I believe, this is my opinion, but I believe, because I listened to him when he answered that question of, oh, that's terrible. I believe it shocked him. I mean, here is a minister that you put into your cabinet that you have to trust, that has power, that contradicted everything that you said and has drawn a line.
When the former prime minister said, as we heard on Wednesday night, stop, this has to stop, it's now up to the Premier of Manitoba to actually put a stop to it by taking action, in my view. He said the right things. He's often very socially highly intelligent, but now he has to act. The actions must match the rhetoric. And Royce, I should just say one thing. I heard Elizabeth Warren talking about this, a senator in the United States. She tried to deflect blame on President Trump for his posts. And that's more atrocious, terrible speech. Unlike Governor Newsom in California, who actually issued a proper statement, as most politicians did on both sides of the aisle in the United States and here in Canada. But those who didn't, they need to be called out. They have no place in public discourse, in my view. Well, you can stand up for violence. You cannot justify it when you're. But it's just atrocious.
You're absolutely right, Lawrence. And I'm seeing comments online about J.D. Vance, of course, escorting the body of Charlie Kirk with his wife and children on Air Force Two, I think they call that, for the vice president. And people condemning that. People condemning it as a waste of government money. Are we at a point, Royce, I don't want to use your political history on this. Are we getting to that point, and maybe it's the new version of it, but of a civil war? Is it that bad almost?
No. I think that the comparison is with the period in the 60s and the 70s in the United States, where Lawrence mentioned this earlier, assassinations were becoming kind of a common part of the American political experience, and that ended. I think that people that talk about civil war, really the mainstream in the United States and in Canada is very opposed to violence, very opposed to political violence. If they don't condemn it as forcefully as they should, that's one issue. But there's no reasonable person. There's no mainstream political figure who is a serious advocate for violence. What you get are people online. You get some professors who are just kind of out to lunch, advocating this sort of thing. If you're gonna get like real war, like real unrest, you kind of need to have serious people advocating for it, and I don't think we do.
Well, Royce, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. Like, yeah, okay, we're not having any political leaders that are pushing for violence, but they're not saying anything. They're putting their head in the sand, or they're turtling up and hiding from all this stuff, and they're doing a lot of political spin. And that's what Harper was, talked about on Wednesday, and I'm harping on it a lot. See how I did that? That he was very clear and very intelligent in saying we need leadership right now. We need leadership that says stop. You both talked about that. We need leadership to take action right now. And not taking action is just as bad as inciting violence, in my opinion, if you're just going to hide from it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also politicians or leaders have to respond to all instances of violence.
Listen, I also want to include the three of us have been subject to all kinds of online harassment and, nasty comments and you name it. Lawrence probably more so because he's Jewish too. And we have been, we've been subject of that. So, and I think we've been subject to that, Lawrence and I, by our political opponents.
I could tell you that's true. I've been told I'm actually on a list. So we'll see what happens with that. But I also want to tell you this, and you guys know this, A recent Canadian study showed that 1 in 5, that is 20% of Canadian students, say terrorism can be justified. 32% of American students in a recent survey said they didn't think it was unacceptable to be opposed to violence to stop a speaker from being heard. They said it was rarely acceptable, but at least there was a wedge in to say sometimes it's acceptable to use violence to stop a speaker from being heard. The Toronto District School Board puts out books that glorify terrorism. So, Kevin, when you ask, are we at the point of civil war? I don't think we are, but do we see the seeds of a nonsensical resistance kind of a rhetoric that leads to violence and possibly that? Yeah, I think we can plainly see seeds of that being planted. They're further planted in France and in the United Kingdom and in the United States, but we do see them here. And make no mistake, that violence has a history of seeping into Canada. We've seen it through the FOQ crisis, and all those Marxist resistance types of things that are now blossoming here, they're united. They talk. They coordinate.
Yeah. Let me change my statement about civil war then. Civil unrest. Would you agree that there's a lot of civil unrest?
Yeah, well, we see it every day in Canada already. Protests, people engage, saying things, doing things they shouldn't be doing, the laws not being enforced. So yeah, we see all sorts of civil unrest. I think one of the reasons that people are concerned about these statements from professors, it's not that many, but I think people feel it kind of gives them a glimpse into what's happening in the classroom. If this person says this on social media, then what are they saying to my kids in the university? And I think that's a perfectly reasonable. I think that's a reasonable position to take. We should be concerned about those things.
So I want to get your comments from both of you on a post that J.K. Rowling put out. And, J.K.'s always been very upfront about her beliefs, and she's taken a beating. They tried to cancel her and so on. However, she put out another book under her other name, and it's #1. So that cancellation isn't working. But this is what J.K. Rowling said. If you believe free speech is for your political opponents, sorry, let me start that again. If you believe free speech is for you, but not for your political opponents, you're a liberal. And then it goes on to say, if no contrary evidence could change your beliefs, you're a fundamentalist. If you believe the state should punish those with contrary views, you're a totalitarian. And if you believe political opponents should be punished with violence or death, you're a terrorist. Lawrence?
She's exactly as she so often is. She's exactly right. She puts it succinctly. She's spot on. I do want to come back to the issue of civil war. I don't see a civil war, and I don't think that Canada is as far down the line as a very polarized United States. And as I said, the United Kingdom and elsewhere. But it is dangerous. Ms. Rowling is right on in what she's saying. And if you think back to a government of Mr. Trudeau and how he would polarize, and I don't see Mr. Carney doing this the same way, frankly, which is a good thing, but Mr. Trudeau would consistently demonize anyone who held a contrary view. We saw that over and over and over again. And that's a very dangerous path. I'm thankful that Mr. Carney doesn't do that, or hasn't done it so far, at least that I've read. And so that's a positive thing. Very, very dangerous. And we really have to turn down the heat and be aware not to reap what we sow, and what's being sown out there. I shouldn't say what we sow, what's being sown out there by, I think it's a minority. I think it's a vocal, violent, Marxist-inspired type of minority. And I think it's time, I hope it's time that the silent majority rises up and says enough. This is the line. Enough.
Royce, what are your thoughts on JK's statements?
Yeah, I think it's correct. I can't. It was the first thing that liberals are people that only think that people you agree with should have free speech. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it kind of, when we talk about liberal education, kind of small L liberalism, I mean, that's how Charlie Kirk would have been identified, as someone that thinks we need to talk through our differences, we need to persuade each other, we need to argue. And so I mean, we lose that. We're missing that in a lot of Western societies. The willingness to debate, the willingness to engage, the willingness to be around people you disagree with and argue in good faith. One of the things I find very disturbing in the last few years is the rise of people who they cut ties with their friends and their family because they don't agree with them politically. You voted for Trump. You don't you don't talk to your family. It's just crazy to me. And so yeah, it's important that we talk, and it's that much more important that we talk to people that we disagree with. We engage with those ideas honestly. Otherwise, democracy, as we know it, is pretty much in trouble.
We're going to move. Oh, go ahead, Florence.
Sorry, I just had one thing, just a positive note, if I could. When I went to university, we would sit around the table and have vigorous debates about all sorts of issues, and then we'd go have a beer. And it was all perfectly fine and normal. And frankly, I was appointed as a human rights adjudicator by the NDP twice and by the PCs once. I'm still me. My views are the same. But the NDP in those days, they tolerated that. You would never have a minister saying what Minister Fontaine did. And I remember what the Premier did with one of his people in caucus who happened to have a law partner who was a criminal defense attorney. And Mr.
Wasselu.
Right. Mr. Wasselu was removed for that. I come back to this. I really hope that the Premier does the right thing. I don't want to say I'm confident he will, but I want to be confident that he will.
I believe that this story is going to, that we broke on the Winnipeg Sun, but I believe that this story is going to gain more and more traction. Other media is going to start to cover it. They'll have their own take on it, of course. Everyone's going to be watching Wab Kinew, but I also believe that American government officials are going to be watching what happens with Nahanni Fontaine. I believe somebody from the White House is going to be paying attention to what Wab Kinew does with Nahanni Fontaine. And I believe they should. Right? If we're going to be friends, if we're going to be neighbors, if we're all going to get along, that shouldn't happen. But I believe that in order for Wab Kinew to not be seen as a hypocrite for the statement that he did put out, that we've all agreed again is very professional, very statesmanlike, and an excellent way to approach this. If he doesn't act quickly to remove Nahanni Fontaine from office, then he is just as bad as she is. And I'd also like to see, quite frankly, our prime minister say something about this. Our prime minister, calling out and saying, look, politicians do not say stuff like that. We have to this is an opportunity, right? We have this opportunity right now to turn a corner. Come out, be strong, say it's wrong, and hold somebody accountable. If Kinew doesn't, he fails.
It's a good point about Carney. I mean, federal ministers, the prime minister, condemn provincial politicians for much less than that. They do it all the time. It would be nice, actually, to see the prime minister make a firm statement on it.
Okay, well, we're going to leave that right now. We're going to be following it in the Winnipeg Sun. If you haven't read the column or the story in the Winnipeg Sun, you can go to winnipegsun.com and you can read about the Nahanni Fontaine. You can see what she posted on Instagram, which, of course, apparently was quickly taken down because that's an easy way to try and hide it. But you did it. That's the wonderful thing about the internet. It doesn't have a delete button. And you can't white things out on the internet. You can't erase them. They're there and they're there forever, and you're going to have to answer to it. I want to talk about real quickly, and I had a bunch of other stuff. The whole nation building projects that aren't actually nation building projects, because I don't know how having a super train from Toronto to Montreal builds our nation. I'm stuck on that one. We can spend a few seconds talking about that right now. What were your thoughts, Lawrence, when you heard about the big nation building projects that really didn't include Manitoba, didn't include a pipeline, it included a fast train?
I've got to say, the whole concept is ridiculous because fundamentally the legislation we have in place is wrong, stifles growth, stifles development. And so now they've putting that into the body politic and the economic body that is Canada, They then put this little salve, this little band-aid on, say, okay, these will be the projects that we quote unquote fast track, which won't be fast tracked. They then also have to have buy-in from different groups. I'm afraid it's more smoke and mirrors. I wish it wasn't so. I don't see it as nation building. Most of them. It's great if they expand the LNG production and port in BC. That's fantastic.
Mhm.
We should do that. We should be exporting more LNG. We lost it with Europe on the east. If we expand it in the west to India, that's a really good thing, and other Asian countries. But I see it as more rhetoric, more smoke and mirrors, not action. We have to get to the root problem. Although, having said that, Premier Smith, I think that this was yesterday, came out of a meeting with Prime Minister Carney and was very optimistic and said that Ottawa was beginning to get it out of Alberta. I don't know what we'll see. I don't know what actually was done or said there. In the initial projects, we don't see it. Apparently, there's more projects that are going to be announced, I think, after a Remembrance Day, I think it is. So we'll see what happens. But I don't harbor a lot of confidence that things are going to improve. I mean, just think about it. How long is it going to take to rebuild Churchill, which wasn't one of the announcements? How long is it going to be? How long is it to do the LNG plant?
Yeah.
How long is it going to? We've heard about this fast train for how many years now? Is it 20?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fast train. That's a fast train to nowhere. I think this was just a lot of political fluff and spin, which will lead me into my next little tidbit. But I want to hear, Royce, I want to hear your thoughts on this announcement or lack thereof. Major announcements. Too little, too late. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can think about the government like you get a program, you get good ideas, good public policy, and then
Oh,
it gets
I'm sorry. Hang on. You get good ideas and good policy from government?
no,
Do you have evidence of that? Do you have proof
well,
that you can show
let
us?
me finish. That's the hypothetical situation. But then it has to go through the PMO, has to go through the political advisors, it has to go through the regional lieutenants, it has to go through this and that and that. And that's when you get things like this, a list of projects that, as you said, kind of seem more political than focused on nation building, on infrastructure building. Too much concern with regions that voted strongly liberal in the last election, too much concern with pacifying certain political constituencies, not enough focus on the things that don't really matter. How do we accept that this list doesn't include a pipeline? Wasn't that supposed to be the centerpiece? How is this possible? How do we take anything seriously when that isn't included in the list? And so I think Danielle Smith is trying to do the best she can for her province. She's trying to be constructive. She's trying to be positive. But I can guarantee they were not happy with that list when it came out.
Let's all be honest, right? When that list came out, the Alberta separatism movement just grew by 90%, right? I mean, it's going to be building more and more steam because, and I think you're right, Premier Smith is handling it quite eloquently, very professionally and such. But I don't know how you announce a train between Toronto and Montreal and think that that's going to save this country. And you don't announce a pipeline. Like it really, to me, at that particular point in time, I thought if everyone who voted for Carney didn't realize at that point they made a mistake, they never will. Because that's your evidence right there, which leads me to a little birdie that is involved in Parliament and quite connected, who told us at the Winnipeg Sun that their belief is that we may see a federal election in the fall of 2026, that the NDP has no desire to keep going the way they're going. They believe, polls are telling them, that if there's an election, they could probably gain back full party status with some new people running. They believe that the Parti Québécois wants to bring the government down sooner rather than later as well, because they think they can win back some seats. And I think really if that happened, only the Liberals and Conservatives would be financially ready. Maybe the or the Bloc, sorry. So all of this is now coming out, and it's coming from some people inside. What are your thoughts about that, Lawrence?
Well, I'm not a fortune teller. There's many streams and flows going each different way for early election, for later election. It's very hard to tell what's going to occur. In Quebec, the PQ provincially is far ahead in the polls. Will they actually win? Will they not? Because they are saying this is going to be a separatism election. If that's true, what does that mean for the BQ in Ottawa? Because usually there's an inverse type of a relationship there. So it's very interesting to see from the NDP perspective. Did you see the people who are running for leadership of that party? How in God's name does that mean they're going to rise in the polls? On the other hand, flowing against that is the fact that Mr. Carney seems to be governing more from the center than the left, in his rhetoric, at least, in what he says, not really in what he does, interestingly, but in what he says. And so there is probably room on the left for a party to come up and actually be active. I just don't see the leadership candidates of the NDP being able to captain that ship. That they're generally ineffective or actually dangerous. And this will tie back to the earlier conversation we had about Charlie Kirk and the type of thing that I think that some of those people who are running for leadership espouse. So lots of different streams, lots of different currents. We'll have to wait and see. Those who want to run, God bless them, and I wish them luck.
Rice, you have been involved in the political scene for a long time, but sometimes you have to admit that sometimes when you get an insider that has that type of information, you got to give it a little more weight.
Sure. I mean, I think Lawrence makes a good point. Carney is governing more from the right. His rhetoric is he's moved to the right to confront what he perceives to be the real threat, which is the Conservatives. That's probably the correct move, but it leaves an opportunity open on the left for the NDP. The question is, can the NDP actually seize that opportunity? The last election, they had a historically awful result. And really, there's two possibilities that flow from that. Either they kind of say, oh, we're in trouble, and they get into the fetal position, they just wait for 4 years and then go into another election. Or they say, well, actually, we don't have that much to lose anymore. Why don't we kind of seize the day and go into an early election? Maybe we can win some of this back, take advantage of the opportunity. And, after years of the NDP, they had all sorts of power in the last minority parliament. They could have defeated Justin Trudeau's government. They just consistently failed to do so. It battered their image. I would like to see that. I think we need a kind of a more muscular party on the left that is willing to stand up on some of these issues.
All right, I'm going to cut you guys off. Breaking news on our little podcast of Inside Politics. Nahanni Fontaine has put out an apology. I apologize for sharing a post yesterday on the murder of Charlie Kirk. Violence has no place in our democracy. Political debate is achieved with words and discussion. In a world too often divided, we should strive to show empathy to everyone, even those we don't agree with.
She's got to go. I really hope that the people of Manitoba deliver a clear message to the Premier that is unacceptable. She's apologized over and over, but her sense of arrogance and entitlement that she keeps doing this, that she's holier than thou, smarter than everybody, it's enough already. She's got to go. Just to go back, though, to the previous conversation for a sec, my hope is that the Conservatives, if what the birdie told you, Kevin, is true, I hope the Conservative Party is much more active and ready this time. They were ready financially, but they weren't in other respects in terms of the actual foot soldiers on the ground in some constituencies. They should get their candidates nominated quickly. They should be ready to go. They should be out there. And I hope that also Pierre's message is more tailored to the current time, and he's not led into fighting a past fight, instead fighting the current fight. And so far, from what I've heard from him, he is. But that's going to be really important. Especially, I see him as being one of the few politicians, if Alberta separatism continues and if the PQ wins in Quebec, he's one of the very few people that can keep Canada united and strong.
Quite possibly. Quite possibly. And we apologize. Lawrence is in a different part of Manitoba up north, so we're having some technical screen freezing happening for him, but we get to hear his voice clearly. So if you are seeing that, we do apologize. I want to get your comment, Royce, on this apology from Minister Nahanni Fontaine. Too little, too late?
So she says in her most recent statement that we should have empathy. She said in her original retweet or repost that she has no empathy. So which is it? To forgive is divine, but it's politics. And I think people should reasonably ask what her real position is on this.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be very open about this. She firmly believes and always talks, has protected Wab Kinew because of some stuff that he's done in the past, saying, "Oh, he's apologized." She apologized for the sign language. He's apologized for other things. I'm tired of her apologies. I am with Lawrence on this, and I think I'm with you, Royce. Wab Kinew has to show he's a leader, that he has the courage. He has the courage to say, nice apology, but you're out. We cannot have you. I think what Wab Kinew has to understand, apology or not, she's now a liability. And that apology is not going to carry any weight with supporters of Charlie Kirk. It's not going to carry any weight with politicians in the United States. And it shouldn't carry any weight with anyone watching this program. And I'm sure people will beat me up for it. Oh, but she apologized. But it's to what Royce said. We should have empathy, but she said in her post that she put out there that she had no empathy, that she had none.
And Kevin, you're exactly right. A true apology is not someone who says, "I'm sorry," and repeats the very same behavior over and over again over a period of years. And that's the problem. You actually have to not only say, "I'm sorry," you have to acknowledge the fault. She should have said much more than what she said. Royce's point is exactly spot on. And she has to change her behavior. And that's what she seems to be incapable of doing, judging by the past. I do want to correct you. I want to say in wonderful Woodridge, Manitoba, which is in the southeast corner at the Vintage Corner Store, which is a fantastic place in Woodridge. I own no interest in it.
All right. Well, we'll see if Wab Kinew, the Premier of Manitoba, or the Prime Minister comes out and shares their feelings on what this Minister Nahanni Fontaine of Manitoba said. We'll see what the reaction is, I'm sure, over the next few days, not only online, but from other political leaders. And we hope to see. We hope to see. You know what? I would like to be able to come back to this show next week and praise Wab Kinew for doing the right thing. I would like to be able to do that. I would like to be able to come back and then it's the story's over. But if he doesn't, the story's not over. The story will be carried on, and it will just become more and more. And I want to add that this is the same person that only a week ago, or maybe a little bit more, was online, talking about all the bad things people say about her. She did a whole video on it. And, mentioning like some of the comments that were made and calling her evil and calling her this. And then she has the audacity to put out what she put out about Charlie Kirk, and now to come back and say she apologizes for it, she wants to see empathy. You're right. Who do we believe, Dr. Jekyll or Mrs. Hyde? Like, I really don't know who we believe there. So we'll find out what happens. I appreciate you all watching Inside Politics this week. We ask you to like and follow our page. Royce, you said there's something that I should be saying that all the YouTubers say. Do you remember what that was?
Smash that subscribe button.
Smash the subscribe button.
And the like button, too.
Oh, and the like button. So smash the subscribe button. You know what?
My daughter's going to appreciate having you say that.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll say it just to your daughter. I feel like an old guy. I don't know what it means. I'm happy that we can have an intelligent conversation. We can disagree sometimes, and we can get out hopefully a more common sense discussion on what's happening in politics. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you both next week.
Thanks for watching Inside Politics with Kevin Klein. Please like and subscribe to this channel and visit thewinnipegsun.com for more.